Is Monday, July 7th, 2025, and the time is 6:02 p.m. We're here for the budget work session of the Coppell City Council. We have a quorum present, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Our first item is citizens' appearance. We make it very complicated. We actually have two citizens' appearances, one at the beginning and one at the end. If anybody signed up to speak at one or the other, please let me know whether you do. Oh, Mr. Shaw says number two. We do have one person signed up to speak, Ms. Kimberly Harrell. Just as a reminder, persons wishing to speak must sign the register and list their address. Presentations by individuals shall be limited to 3 minutes. A person signed up to speak will be called in the order that they're signed up. No personal attacks of any speaker should be made against any member of the council and the mayor, individual, group, or corporation. We cannot comment or deliberate due to the Texas Open Meetings Act. Ms. Harrell.
Okay, thank y'all for your time. I'll talk quickly and swiftly. This is my first time to appear and to talk in front of the City Council. I have a major concern about the flooding that's on my street, which is 104 Heather Glen Drive. I've lived in Coppell for 23 years. I'm 61 years old, and for the past 15 years, I've lived on Heather Glen Drive, which is just the street just to the east, behind Trader Joe's. That road has been flooding since 2016. I've lost cars, my friends have lost cars, and this past major flooding that was on June the 3rd, it almost flooded my home and 3 more other homes on that particular street. I want to make sure that hopefully in the budget there is some money to help with the drainage here in Coppell. I did file a request for the engineers of Coppell to come out and look at the drains to see if they were flooded. They said that they were not, that particular rain did not hold the capacity of the rain that fell that day. So this happened way before what happened in Kerrville. Again, this happened on June the 3rd, morning of June the 3rd. And anyway, I'm just here to voice my concerns about that. There is a planning and zoning meeting on July the 17th, which is this Thursday. I'll be there as well. Again, I don't know if this is the right forum that I need to voice my opinion about this and my concern about this, but I'm going to be at every council meeting until something gets resolved or we make sure that our streets are safe. That's all that I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3 on the budget is an introduction of the general fund and debt service. Ms. Tianor.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening is our second budget workshop on the proposed fiscal year 26 budget. And the funds I will cover this evening or present are the general fund and the debt service fund. Before I present the proposed budget for these funds, I would like to share a few highlights. The proposed budget is a balanced budget. So as we walk through the proposed general fund budget, please remember that a budget is balanced if the revenues and proposed use of fund balance equals or exceeds the proposed expenditures. And this will be important to remember when we cover the general fund expenditures. The proposed budget does maintain current service levels. I point this out because you will hear about some staff reductions. And I'd like to point out that all staff reductions were positions that are currently vacant. Next, the proposed budget is built around direction given by council at both the January and May council retreats. Specifically, the direction was to build a budget that continues to assume the sales tax rule 3.334 is in effect since litigation continues. The property tax revenue would be increased by 3.499%, and that there would be a strategic use of the general fund's fund balance, and I'll share more on this when I share the proposed general fund expenditure budget. Also included is the necessary salary adjustments to maintain employees in the top third as compared to our list of comparison cities as determined by the compensation study that was recently completed. And then last, the proposed budget, general fund operating expenditures is increasing 2.33% over the prior year operating expenditures. And as we cover expenditures, please remember that the operating expenditures do exclude one-time transfers and one-time uses of fund balance for items funded with the assigned fund balance of the general fund. For example, you'll see a one-time transfer of $5.5 million from the general fund to the Municipal Drainage Utility District, or as we like to call it, the DUD. And that was directed by council during the May 6th council retreat. You will also see inclusion of the cost of the 2040 initiatives shown in Council's Vision 2040 work plan for fiscal year 26. And then before we move on from this topic, I think I'd like to make a couple of points or additional comments. And the first is that the increase in CPI from January 24 to May of 25 was about 4%. And the proposed general fund budget for operating expenditures is only increasing 2.33%, so less than inflation. This modest increase does demonstrate fiscal stewardship and the use of the strategies mentioned during the 5-year forecast presentation that was made by our assistant directors on May 6th. And that was at the council retreat. Specifically, you might remember this slide. It's the Austin Gap slide. This is where we had the discussion about the Austin Gap, and basically the Austin Gap is referring to the limitations placed on property tax revenue generated by municipalities. And yes, I'm referring to what was referred to when legislation passed as SB2. SB2 moved from limiting the increase in the tax rate to limiting property tax revenue. Before SB2, the increase in was based on the property tax rate was limited to 8%. Today, the growth in the property tax revenue is limited to 3.499. The state has placed a limitation on revenue growth that is less than the growth in inflation, and it's even less than the growth in public safety salaries. The limitation it doesn't even keep up with inflation causes the gap between the revenues and expenditures shown on this slide. The slide is again from the 5-year forecast presentation. Recall that the red bar is the projected expenditures of the general fund, and this includes a 5% growth in salary and benefits and modest growths in supplies, maintenance, and services, and then any requests from departments. The blue bar represents projected revenue that increases property tax revenues 3.499%, and then the gray bar represents the projected revenue that keeps the property tax revenue flat with no increases. The Austin Gap is the difference between the projected expenditures and then either of the two revenue scenarios shown. And then on the right side of this slide are the strategies that were identified by the assistant director group that can be used to close the gap. And so as I cover the expenditures of the general fund, I'll share the strategies used by each department to help close the Austin Gap, beginning with the fiscal year 26 proposed budget. And those strategies employed during this budget will have a continued impact on future years. And so that concludes my introductory comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But I do ask that if you have any questions related to expenditures or revenues, that you wait until I present those areas.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Kim, thanks for the presentation. When you started, you mentioned something about open positions being made redundant. Did you give us a number?
I will do that when I get to it.
Thank you. And a quick comment. I love the strategies on this slide. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, then we will.
I could have just given you the whole floor for the rest of the evening, so just
You
go ahead and
can.
continue items 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8.
They're all mine. I'll be here for a while. So let me know when you need a break from hearing me. So this next is the presentation and discussion regarding the general fund. So you may have noticed that the order of the presentation this evening is different from prior years. We're mirroring the order in which legislation requires you to adopt. So first, we will walk through expenditures. or really the expenditures are the investment in the infrastructure of the community and the services provided by the city that are included in the proposed fiscal year 26 budget. After that, we'll visit revenues and then close with the portion of the agenda with the information on property values and tax rates. So we're going to start with this pie chart. And this pie chart is located at the top of page 4 in your binder. If you're using the electronic packet that was emailed out to you by Phoebe, it's going to be on page 8. This chart provides a comparison of the fiscal year 25 adopted budgeted expenditures compared to the fiscal year 26 proposed budgeted expenditures by function. And I start with expenditures because this is where we share with the community what they are receiving from the city. In a sense, this is the return on their investment in the community, an investment made each year when you and all members of the community pay the city portion of your property tax bill. Expenditures are also how we communicate to you, the council, and to our community that we're listening. We hear what the community wants. They want current service levels maintained. They want well-maintained infrastructure, and they want all the amenities offered by the Community Experiences Department. They also want the Vision 2040, those guidelines, as we hear from them through that tool, the 2040 Vision 2040, and that helps guide us as we build the proposed budget also. So the total fiscal year 26 proposed expenditures is $83.8 million, compared to $105.5 million for the fiscal year 25 adopted budgeted expenditures. And remember that the fiscal year adopted budget included about a $31 million transfer from the general fund to the infrastructure maintenance fund for facilities and traffic control projects, those maintenance projects, that were to be completed over a 5-year period. The fiscal year 26 proposed budget also includes the council directed transfer, again, of the $5.5 million from the general fund to the DUD. And these transfers are included in the general government, which is the dark blue portion of the pie chart. Now the next 5 slides will drill down into what's included in each of these 5 categories shown in these pie charts. So I'm going to use those slides to share with you the stories, strategies, and budget highlights of each department. The information I cover can be found on page 2 and 3 of your notebook, or page 5 and 6, or I'm sorry, pages 6 and 7 of the agenda packet that was emailed. So we're going to start with general government. This slide shows you each department grouped under general government, and it compares the fiscal year 25 budget to the fiscal year proposed budget. You can see that the general government proposed budget is about $23.4 million. Fiscal year adopted general was $45.8. If we removed those one-time expenditures that I mentioned, the $31 million from prior year and the $5.5 from this year, general government would make up about 23% of the total general fund fiscal year 26 proposed budget. Now, the first department on here is mayor council, but I'm going to make you wait to go over that one. It has its own section. I know you'll be excited to go through that. So we'll cover that later and spend a little bit more time. I would first like to cover the legal category. This budget is increased $150,000, and it's for the continued litigation costs related to the Rule 3.334. Continuing on to combined services, which is the next department I'd like to cover. The fiscal year proposed budget is about 24.3 less than the fiscal year 25 budget. And again, this is where that $31.1 million transfer to the IMF was budgeted last year. It is being offset a bit by a $5.5 million transfer to the DUD. This is also where we budgeted $1,080,000 for Vision 2040 work plan items, which are considered one-time uses of the Vision 2040 assigned fund balance. I did provide you a handout this evening, which is an analysis of the Combined Services fiscal year 25 adopted budget compared to the fiscal year 26 proposed. The results are this department's budget is increasing about $260,000. And that increase is the result of the transfer to the replacement fund and then an increase in the cost of general insurance. Next is Enterprise Solutions Department. I'd like to talk about that one. This is increasing $1.3 million. The increase is necessary for the department to deliver internal services that are responsive to departmental needs and that align with our core values of transparency, security, and innovation. The ES team utilized the strategies of reorganizing roles and reevaluating vendor services in creating its budget. In addition, they needed to keep in mind security. And so specifically, the proposed budget increase is related to the increases in salaries related to the reclassification and reorganization of this department, which included moving a position from the police department to the Enterprise Solutions. There was a systems administrator that was housed under public safety, and it's been moved to the Enterprise Solutions department. In addition, the proposed budget includes increases related to security, and it also includes the first phase of replacing the permitting and licensing software. So do you have any questions regarding the departments covered on this slide?
Kim, can you tell us the top components of combined services? What falls under combined services?
What falls in the combined services area? So as I mentioned, it's the transfer. So there's $5.5 million transfer to the DUD. And then it also includes $1,080,000 for Vision 2040
Kim, I
projects.
apologize. I'll rephrase my question.
Okay.
What city services fall under combined services?
So combined services is where we budget things that cover things for the whole city. So electricity, there's some, for this whole building, the electricity would be in there because we don't allocate it to a specific department. Does that help you?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, the next slide, it shows all the departments that fall under the public safety function, and I'm going to begin with the fire department's budget. It reflects a careful assessment of community needs, regulatory changes, and technological advancements to support the fire department's all hazards approach. Fire's budget is increasing a little over $1 million, and the increase is in salary and benefits, and it actually would have been greater if the fire department had not utilized the reorganizing roles to reduce the fire staff's count by 1 position. The remaining budget categories for fire are really being held flat, with some categories increasing while others decreased. For example, the fiscal year 25 services budget included the cost of an ISO consultant and some new phones, whereas the fiscal year 26 proposed includes increases in tools and equipment, which offset the reduction in the services category. Next is the police department. I'd like to share a little on that department. This budget was built with the philosophy that the police department is one department within the city of Coppell and operates under the mindset that all city departments working together with the community is what makes our community safe. The police department is focused on service delivery to the community while being good stewards of the resources that the community provides. The police department utilized the reorganizing roles from creating its budget, which had an impact on salaries and benefits of the department. Specifically, the police employee count decreased by 1, and again, as I mentioned, it was the movement of that systems analyst position to the Enterprise Solutions Department. In addition, the budget includes the reclassification of 2 sworn officers to civilians, and then some more tenured officers elected to move to the SRO program. So their salaries left the general fund budget and went into the crime control budget and were replaced with newer officers. So the other budget classifications really did remain flat for the police department. So are there any questions on public safety?
Kevin?
So just in talking about FTEs, was that a net of -1? Is that what I heard? Because we had one move over? So a reduction in fire?
Correct. Yes, you are up. We are up to one reduction in a position.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm tracking where everybody's going. So
Yes.
somebody went from police to ES, and then we had one reduction on the fire side.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Just
That's what you have.
The police at 9.95, what percentage of the budget is that? Is that about 13%?
The police department is, and I can tell you, they are, Jerry, do you have that?
excuse me.
It's not called out separately.
No. Jerry, do you have that?
Combined is 39.15.
Expenditures.
Is it, Kim, it's all right, it's, the 76, using 76 as the total budget, general fund, it'd
Yes.
be about 12%,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
roughly. Quick number,
Did 13 in my head. Sorry.
you can get more precise if you
No,
like.
that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Next, Public Works. So this slide shows the departments grouped under Public Works. So the department is the departments shown on this slide all fall under Public Works and under one director. Public Works is responsible for not only the maintenance of the city's infrastructure, which includes facilities, fleet, traffic control systems, streets, sidewalks, and alleys, but also growth and development of members of their team. Public Works utilized the reorganizing roles strategy while building its budget. Recall during the water sewer presentation on June 23rd that 3 positions were moved from streets to water sewer. I'm going to talk about facilities. This budget is about $297,000 more than the fiscal year 25 adopted. And the increase is really the result of the inclusion of a $220,000 transfer to the IMF for facilities. I will share that the request was actually $1,220,000, and it was reduced to $220,000, with the remaining $1 million being funded from the actual fiscal year 24 interest earnings. That's in the IMF fund. So the interest earnings is not allocated to streets, facilities, or traffic. It's included in undesignated fund balance of the IMF fund. And so as of June 30th of 2025, so just last month, the undesignated fund balance is about $7 million. And the fund balance policy of requirement for the IMF fund is that undesignated fund balance is maintained at 25% of budgeted sales tax. So this strategy will not negatively impact the IMF's ability to comply with the fund balance policy. Next, I want to point out the streets. So the proposed fiscal year 26 budget for streets is about $833,000 less than the fiscal year 25 adopted. And this is related to 2 factors. First, as mentioned, is the movement of the 3 positions from the streets fund or streets department to the water sewer fund. And so this is not a reduction in total positions. It's simply moving from one fund to another. The other factor contributing to the reduction in this budget is we reduced the transfer for streets from general fund to the IMF by $500,000. And instead, this $500,000 will be funded using the quarter-cent sales tax that's received for street maintenance. And then the last is traffic. The fiscal year 26 proposed budget is about $213,000 more. The increase is really primarily due to the increase of the transfer to the IMF for traffic control in the amount of $190,000. I'd like to note that this budget will be updated when I present to you at the next budget workshop at the end of the month. And the proposed budget for this department will increase $189,000. We recently received notification from Encore that they are requesting a 51% increase in fees charged for streetlights. So you will see that reflected next time. Are there any questions on this slide?
They can,
49%.
they can do that?
I'm gonna ask a really stupid question here. I thought the streetlights were provided by Encore at their cost,
This is
Nothing's
not-
free.
This is the charge, the monthly charge.
the electricity.
Electricity. Plus there's a toll charge as well. There's a tariff. There's a tariff.
I will tell you, we are seeing tariff charges on invoices and included in quotes now.
I'm sorry?
We are
Two
seeing
different tariffs,
a
though.
line
Two
item
di- yeah,
for
two
Two
tariffs.
different tariffs.
Two different kinds of
Oh,
tariffs.
oh. My mind is on the invoices we just saw.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, next is culture and recreation. This slide shows all the departments grouped as culture and recreational. With the exception of the top one, which is Life Safety Park, these departments all fall under the Community Experiences umbrella. The mission of Coppell Community Experiences is to cultivate community by creating diverse opportunities to connect through shared experiences. The Community Experiences budget focuses on maintaining high-quality resources and prioritizing timely replacements to ensure safety and consistently providing exceptional service. The Community Experiences team utilized the reorganizing roles strategy as they prepared their budget. Starting with the library, the fiscal year 26 proposed budget is about $145,000 more than the fiscal year 25 adopted. This budget includes, well, the primary driver of this increase is the replacement of the current library software. So their current software is at end of life, and so they're requesting to replace that, and it also includes some reupholstering of furniture. And so that is the main reason for the increase in the library budget. And then the parks operations budget is increasing about $123,000. And there's really two reasons for this, and they're contractual services agreements. The contractual cleaning services agreement, which covers the cleaning of restrooms at 9 parks buildings, is expected to go up. And then the contract for mowing services is expected to go up. And that's related to, that contract was entered about 5 years ago, and at that time, we did not have Fire Station 4 and 5, South Beltline medians, and some other areas that are now being covered by staff that they will incorporate into this contract. So those are the reasons for parks increasing. And then the core budget is decreasing $110,000, and this reflects a reduction of 2 full-time positions. Again, these are positions that are vacant. As positions become vacant, leadership does reevaluate the needs of the department, the organization, and the community, and then they make changes accordingly. In this situation, the head lifeguard position was removed. The community experience team says that removing this position is possible by reallocating duties to part-time staff members. There will be no reduction in programs or services to members or guests. The other position that's being removed is the aquatic technician. That position was removed because there is an additional aquatic technician position that can cover all the pool maintenance duties. And so, again, there'll be no reduction in programs, maintenance levels, or services to members and guests. Next is the senior center budget, and it appears to be decreasing, but I wanted to assure our seniors that that is not the case. It's really being maintained relatively flat. The reason that it looks like it's decreasing is because last year included the replacement of some furniture. And then the last department is the tennis and pickleball center. It has proposed an increase of $126,000 over the fiscal year adopted budget. And really the increase They're seeing an increase in users for both tennis and pickleball programs that they feel necessitates an increase in part-time staff hours. And that accounts for about 93,000 of the increase. And they think that by adding these hours that it'll help them serve the community better and address some of the needs over there. So are there any questions on the community culture and recreation functions? We'll move along to community development. So community development is the last expenditure function. Community development functions include the development services, planning, building inspections, and environmental health. The budget is designed to enable the successful implementation of all of these efforts while providing excellent customer service to the citizens of Coppell. The Community Development Department utilized reorganizing roles and reevaluating vendor services strategies when developing the fiscal year 26 proposed budget. So specifically, the Community Development Administrative line, which is the top one, is being reduced by about $217,000. And this is really the net impact of a reduction in the proposed services budgeted line item of about $300,000. Specifically, a large portion of the funding for the food truck operations is being removed, as well as other measures to activate the square. But don't be alarmed, because they have a plan. So while these efforts will be less than originally planned, the primary difference will be that the efforts will be coordinated by city staff rather than outside agencies that specialize in this type of work. The reduction was partially offset by the increase in salary and benefits related to the compensation study. The other area that you can see a decrease is building inspections. And it has an overall decrease of about $26,000, but it's important to share because the proposed budget includes an increase of $75,000 for temporary contractual services that's being offset by the elimination of one building inspector position that's currently vacant. Staff is currently absorbing the majority of the work. However, there are times that there are too many inspections for one inspector in one day, or staff is out due to illness or vacation. And so because the city provides next day inspections for all inspection requests, and when our one inspector is out or there are just too many for one person to cover in a day, the city will utilize an outside agency to help cover the requested inspections. So are there any questions?
Kevin?
This might be more of a question for leadership, but as far as like using an outside party, are the standards pretty similar just in terms of an outside inspector coming in versus the City of Coppell standards? Like, is that, how do you maintain consistency and quality using a third party?
It's managed by a building official.
Okay, so,
The
okay.
building official then sets the tone and what's being looked for in the inspections, and we've been using outside contractors now for multiple years.
Yeah.
So this isn't new for us.
Okay, just want to make sure. So it's just kind of like cementing that we're going to remove that one position and just utilize these guys a little bit more potentially?
On an as-needed.
Yeah, on an as-needed basis. Okay, excellent, thank you.
Just the detail.
Let's see. Okay, so this next slide shows you the budget by expenditure classification, and it does exclude one-time transfers for both the fiscal year 25 and the fiscal year 26 proposed budgets. So when I'm going to talk to you percentages, and when I do, it's not the percentages shown. So the percentages shown, for example, for fiscal year 25, the 69% is salary and benefits represents 69% of the total fiscal year 25 budget, whereas it represents 67% of the total fiscal year 26 budget. What I'm going to share is the percentage difference between the years, so you won't find them up there. So for salary and benefits, it's only increasing 2.3%, or about 1.2 million. And the reduction, again, is because we are removing 8 positions from the general fund. 3 are moving to another fund, and 5, there's your answer, are being eliminated. So the 5 that are being eliminated are firefighter, strategic financial engagement is eliminating a staff accountant, and then we have the building inspector, and then we have the 2 positions at the core. So those are the 5 that are being eliminated. The other 3 are being moved to water sewer. Okay? And then I would say supplies and maintenance are really relatively flat. Services, now that one is up about 19% or about 2.6 million. And again, this is where we, the $1,080,000 that I mentioned, that's for the Vision 2040 initiatives. That's where this would be categorized or classified. This is also where the $150,000 for the legal services would fall. This is also where we have about 1.1 million in for the enterprise solutions, for the security steps that they're taking, as well as the first phase of looking for new software for permitting and licensing. And then this is also where we've included about $90,000 for an investment management service for the strategic financial engagement. And you'll hear more about that. We are right now taking quotes and talking to different vendors, but we really think we wear multiple hats, and by hiring an investment management service, maybe they can just help us get a better return on our investment. They have more access, that's what they do. They do that every day, they have more brokers. So we're exploring that, and we've included that in here. We believe that it would be offset by the increase in interest earnings. So are there any questions here? Because I am going to cover capital and transfers later. Next.
Yeah, and this might be for Mike Kent. So with respect to the 5 positions net that we're dropping, were those just opportunistic drops where we looked and saw the positions were open, we hadn't hired anybody, we thought we would just capture the savings and consolidate, or
I would say
were we unable to
they're
fill
more
them, or-
strategic. No, it was more strategic than, opportunity presented itself, but it had to be done in light of where are we trying to go, because we're gonna close this Austin gap. We had to start this year to start reducing our expenses so that we can close the gap. So that caused all the departments to identify strategically where are they gonna go over the next 5 years. Then they took a look and said, okay, here's the openings that we have. How do those fit into that projection of where we're going to go? And how do we adjust accordingly? So it was an opportunity that was done in a strategic way.
Can I share for my department?
Thank you, that answered my question.
Sure.
For my department, we are looking at using technology. So we have actually automated a process, and we're looking at automating another, and then building on that automation so that we can, as positions can vacant, we can look at, is that something we need, or do we need something different?
Thank you.
Kim,
Yes.
you mentioned 3 transfers. It's actually 4, right? You have one going from PD to ES.
That's still within the general fund.
That's within the same fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it doesn't change the count in the general fund.
Okay.
We're just moving them around.
Thank you.
Okay. So next, I thought it might be helpful to provide a more detailed information of transfers. And so this slide provides a breakout of the total transfers between one-time transfers and then annual transfers. And so on this slide, you can see in fiscal year 25, the top portion are all the one-time transfers, and you can see we have the 31 million that went to IMF for streets, or for facilities and traffic. And again, we have the 5.5 transfer today. So we're moving money from the general fund to different funds. And then we have the annual transfers, and so these are things that you would expect to see on an annual basis. The amount may fluctuate, but these are things that we do on an annual basis. And so the first 2 relate to how we replenish the replacement funds. And so these transfers represent 1 year of useful life of the either enterprise solutions items that we've bought or the capital replacements. So the whole purpose of this is so you don't see spikes in the budget. This is more of an even flow every year of what's transferred, with the goal of when it's time to replace it again, we've replenished the replacement funds. So the money is there, and then we start all over. Next is the transfer to IMF for facilities, and I've mentioned to you that they had requested the $1,220,000. We're doing the 220 and pulling the million from the investment earnings. And then again, transfers to streets and traffic. And we talked about the decrease of the 500,000 in streets because we're pulling that from the quarter-cent sales tax, and then we're putting back the transfer to traffic controls of 190. So the annual transfers last year would have been about 2.4, and then the annual transfer this year is about 2.4. So that, in a nutshell, is the transfers, and I thought that might be a little bit more helpful to see it on the screen. Do you have any questions?
Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. I know you explained this thoroughly last year, but just for anyone that's new to it, and just to remind me what your detailed explanation last year, can you explain to us the purpose of the one-time transfers, why we did it last year and why we're doing it this year for DUD?
So those are really strategic uses of the fund balance. We've been budgeting sales tax as if the rule is in effect, and then it hasn't, so we have the money, and this allows us to move money to take care of some projects that we know we need to do over the next 5 years, just in case the rule goes into effect. We put the money there, we know that we have this 5-year buffer that allows us to strategize and make sure that we are taking care of things.
Thank you.
The 5.5 is a little bit different though. That one is, we're reevaluating the DUD, and they'll do a cost, they're going to do a cost study to find out what the rate should be, if you recall from the May.
Right.
This is to help them with the projects that are needed. The money is there, so council made the decision to go ahead and fund that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions on this slide? Okay, next is the general operating. So this slide really, this slide contains the information found at the bottom of page 3 in your notebook or on page 7 in your agenda packet that was emailed. And the slide shows the total expenditures, and then removes the strategic uses of the fund balance to get to what are our operating expenditures. So again, total expenditures last year were almost 105.5 million. This year they're about 83.8. Again, if we move back out the one-time uses of fund balance, last year we just had the 31 million. This year we have the 5.5 that we just talked about, and then again we have the 2.2 million, which is really Vision 2040 initiatives. Now, $1,080,000 of that was in combined services, and we talked about that. The remainder is in different department budgets, projects that they're doing. For example, the 90,000 is in my budget. So this gets us down to operating expenditures last year of 74.4, and this year it's about 76.1 million. Last year, the growth in expenditures from the prior year, fiscal year 24 adopted to the fiscal year 25 proposed, was almost 7.6%. This year, the growth in expenditures from the adopted 25 to the adopted 26 is 2.3%. So I just wanted to capture this on a slide for you. Do you have any questions?
Ramesh?
Thank you, Kim. And this reduction in increase, is it primarily being achieved through those 5 FTE, or is that too much of an assumption?
So are you saying limiting the growth in expenditures to 2.3%? Is that really primarily due to those? Primarily it is due to those, as well as staff really looking at their budgets, and they're holding them pretty flat.
Right. Because your CPI is going up 4%, but you managed to increase your expense only by 2.33. So I'm impressed. Thank you.
Okay, so next, I don't have a slide on this, but capital outlay is the next item on the agenda. There's a page in your binder. It's page 5 in the binder, or page 9 in your electronic agenda packet. Capital outlay for fiscal year 26 is $525,000. It's about $15,000 less than fiscal year 25. Do you have any specific questions on that? On any of the items? If not, I'm going to continue on because I know you have just been wanting to get to your budget. And that is where we're at, Mayor Council's budget. So the information on this slide can be found on page 6 in your binder, or it's page 6 in your binder, and then the detail is on 7 in your binder, or it's page 10 and 11 in your agenda packet that was sent to you electronically. The first page is what's on the slide, and it provides an overview of council's budget. The second page does provide the line item detail of council's budget. The line item detail does include the direction given at the June 23rd budget workshop regarding the service organization requests. So based on the information before you, council's budget is increasing about $101,000 over the fiscal year 25. And the primary reason for the increase in council's budget is a $133,000 increase in the amount awarded to service orgs. That increase is then being offset because we decreased there's a reduction of $25,000 in the legislative travel line item because next year is not a legislative year. And then we also reduced the contingency line by $10,000, and that was just based on trend, what we're seeing. So do you have any questions about your budget? Yes.
What's that?
You got two.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor.
I was reading, so.
No, it's all right, no worries. So just to make sure I understand, the increased amount for the service organizations that we've approved is the difference between the FY '25 amended and proposed for this next year under special projects?
So it's the difference between the adopted and the proposed, and it
Okay.
is included in the special projects, the 6471. And then you can see on the next page, the first column tells you that account number or the object number. So you can see where the 6471 accounts are to see what is included in that budget. Or any account that you want. It shows you the detail that makes up the
Okay,
total
thank you.
amounts of that.
No, that's helpful.
Okay.
Kim, this is probably down in the weeds, but I see the Christmas parade is listed, but the 4th of July is not.
Is the 4th of July paid by Community Experience? The
What's
4th
that?
of July is paid by Community Experience,
Okay,
not by council budget.
so we don't get to take credit for it.
Well, I don't know that anyone
I
will
would say,
stop
Mayor, this
taking
is
credit
your
for it.
budget, so you do get to take credit for all of it.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
council's budget.
That's a nice little slippery sidestep there. Kevin, I'm sorry.
I would like to unraise my hand. I think Jim asked great questions.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Ramesh?
Thank you. On page 7 in the print handout, the second last item, HMWK. Can someone remind me what that
That's
is?
John
It's homework.
Kroll,
The rule.
our sales tax consultant.
I thought it was homework.
It is that too, and it has been for the
Yeah.
last 6 years.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
So are there any other questions on
Oh,
council?
Brianna, I'm sorry.
Sorry, leadership, is that being done by the chamber?
So we had that discussion. We left it in because we hadn't heard if we should take it out because we didn't really know what was going on
Yeah, I
with
feel like
that.
it kind of went away. I hadn't heard about it
We
forever.
haven't either,
Okay,
but we want to be prepared.
okay.
Yeah.
New superintendent, new chamber president, you know. and-
Okay, good point. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Anything else?
I think we're good.
Okay. So next, I'll cover general fund revenues. So general fund revenues begin on page 8 in your notebook. and on page 12 in the emailed agenda packet. The chart on this slide can be found at the bottom of page 10 in your notebook or at the bottom of page 14 in the emailed packet. This chart provides the total proposed budgeted revenues for each revenue category, along with each revenue source's percentage of total revenue of the general fund. For fiscal year 26 proposed budget, revenues total $76.6 million compared to the fiscal year 25 adopted revenues of $74.4 million. Property taxes, which is in the blue piece of the pie, are budgeted based on an increase of 3.499%, which was the direction provided by council at both of the retreats that we had this year. Property tax revenue does represent 61% of the revenues, or approximately 46.7%, or 46.7 million. Next is sales tax. Sales tax is represented by the red piece of the pie, and it's 22% of the total revenues, or about 16.6 million. We do continue to budget as if the rule 3.334 is in effect. And then for fiscal year 26 proposed budget, we are budgeting a 5% increase over the adopted fiscal year 25 budget. So together, property taxes and sales tax make up 83% of total revenues of the general fund. The remaining 17% is from charges for services, court fines, licenses and permits, franchise fees, and then miscellaneous other revenue, which does include interest income. And so I did want to talk about interest income. We are utilizing a strategy, and it's really based on the uncertainty around the current administration's policies. So for example, who will become the new Federal Reserve Chairman in May of next year? And then what interest rate policies will that person implement? We already know that the current administration has expressed a desire to lower interest rates, and if interest rates are lowered, the city will be negatively impacted, and that's because the city does not invest in the stock market. We invest in treasuries and agencies. So therefore, a reduction in interest rates will reduce the city's interest earnings. So the question is, if the new Fed chairman agrees with the current administration and reduces rates, how quickly will interest rates be reduced? And I'm not sure that we can look back at history to answer that question. So instead of trying to predict what will happen with interest rates, we're holding interest rates earnings at the same budgeted level for fiscal year 20 as in fiscal year 25 adopted, and we're allowing any interest earnings over the budget to flow through to the fund balance, and then it can be used for one-time items in the following year. So interest earnings in excess of the 1.8 million budgeted, which flow into fund balance, would be allocated based on the fund balance policy and the excess revenue guideline policy, and then used for one-time uses versus ongoing costs, since this is an unpredictable source of revenue. There's one other revenue category that I wanted to touch base on, and that is the $250,000 transfer to the, from the cemetery into the general fund. The last page in your binder, do we have one for those who don't have a binder? Okay, so everybody has it. Last page of your binder is an updated cemetery sheet based on additional information that we received. And so based on the information before you, I did want to find out, based on new information, if you wanted to continue the $250,000 transfer from the cemetery into the general fund.
We had that discussion
Yeah.
a month ago or so.
Didn't we decide this like last meeting?
Was it last
We had to
meeting?
update the information just to make sure y'all had the most current.
Gotcha.
Because one of the questions was on the revenues was that net of the 15%. And it answered in that moment, and we thought it was, got back and looked, and it wasn't. So therefore, in the red increases if you still keep the 250 as a transfer out to the general fund. That's the reason why we're just affirming that this was the direction that y'all had indicated with even the updated information.
So this is showing that we are enacting the transfer.
This has the transfer in, that's why it's showing you the greater or the increased negative.
So if we don't take any action, then the Royal Oaks will look worse than.
The transfer will cause it to operate more in a deficit than it would.
Correct.
It will still operate in a deficit,
Mm-hmm.
based on the projections. Now, the market, you can see what happens, but.
Okay, we had a couple of questions for Mesh, you were first.
Yes. I don't remember what yeah. Kim, if we go back to slide 8, where you talked about the sales tax, 16.5 million proposed for FY26. What percent of the usual money collected from sales tax is that? Is that 75%?
No, so we're collecting about 24 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that is about 8 to 10 million. So it's about $8 million less than what we anticipate actually collecting.
Okay.
And so when we built the budget, when we implement as if the rule is in effect, we anticipate we're only going to collect about 55%.
55%. Okay. And you also mentioned something about a 5% increase from last year.
Right, so we built in, so that 16.4 is about a 5% increase from the 15.6 adopted.
Got it.
Well, and I should probably be using the top number, the 15 point, the
So,
very top number for sales tax.
Effectively, we are going from an assumption of 55 or 56% to maybe a 58, 59%.
Well,
Yeah,
okay.
if I understand the question correctly, if we didn't factor in growth, which we have had growth in the fund, it'd be at the lower number.
I see.
So it's not
Okay.
the 5% is not a percentage of.
Okay, so this 5% is coming from growth, so it's still 55%.
Right, and so as the years have gone on, that's why I should say, because if you look at the number, it looks a little bit different than 55%, but that's because it includes the 5% growth.
Got it.
So you can't just look at that pure number.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Jim?
Thank you, sir. Can I go back to page 23 in the binder about Rolling Oaks?
Yeah.
Okay, so the revenues are from sales of burial rights, less the 15% required to fund the perpetual care fund. So for FY26 proposed, we see a 1.627. So is that 1.627 already reflect the 15% deduction?
No, it does not. So when I thought that it did, the original numbers that were given to us, it was about 1.6, and that's what I was remembering. But then when we brought the master fee schedule and the fee changed,
Right.
they updated this projection, and I didn't realize that.
Okay.
So they lowered the that's the gross and not the net.
Okay.
And I was remembering 1.6 was the net originally before that change was made.
Okay, well, fair enough. Okay, so we're projecting a gross of 1.627.
Yes.
And that incorporates the newly approved increased fees.
Correct.
Okay. But we're showing the perpetual care fund is upside down by 244.
No, that is a negative because we're reducing the revenues because that money is going to go to the perpetual care fund.
Transfer.
So the,
Okay, 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 I'm with you.
So that was kind of the core of the question. Do we want to leave that transfer in as it is shown here, or just not, or
well,
take
the
it out?
15% we do. It's, so that is
Oh, I'm sorry, not the 244, right, the 250.
the 250 at the bottom.
Okay, so what is the amount that, given all sales that we've received at Rolling Oaks historically, that allowing for the 15% perpetual care fund, are we in a deficit overall on the perpetual care fund? Or are
Oh,
we
no.
in
So-
a positive?
Can I, the perpetual care fund, we moved 15%. So We are gonna move, so the 1,627,000 represents 100%. The 240 represents 15%.
Right.
So we're moving that 15, we're reducing the budget of the operations, and then we're gonna move that to the perpetual care fund. The perpetual care fund cannot be used until every niche and plot is sold.
Right, right.
And so that, it was at fiscal year, at the end of last fiscal year, it was 1.8 million. was in
1.8 million, the
perpetual.
perpetual care fund has $1.8 million in
Yeah.
it right now.
And is that, and that's, is that what it should be, given all the prior sales at the lower
Yes.
numbers and
Yeah,
everything
that's
else?
what all the 15% transfers have added up to.
Yes.
Okay, so we're, okay. I
That
know
is
that's a-
something, that is an automatic that we do for the audit.
Right, right.
We
okay.
automatically move that over.
Okay, but now the 15% that's transferred out based on the new sales amounts is obviously gonna be a higher number each year than it would have been at the old prices, right? So we should be, I've just always been concerned about the perpetual care fund.
Yeah, so.
Not because I've seen anything that leads me to
No,
believe
no,
we're
no.
upside down,
To be
but,
real clear, the perpetual care fund will never fully fund the complete care of the cemetery when it's finished. When all the lots are sold, there's no expectation that the perpetual care fund will fully fund the operations of the cemetery.
okay,
It will supplement.
It is going to be a cost center for the city perpetually.
That's an important point, that's been bothering me a lot.
well,
That's how
I guess-
that's how cemeteries work from the municipality standpoint.
Well, maybe, I don't know, obviously it's not for today, but maybe we should look at increasing the sales prices to a point where it would fully fund, so that it wouldn't be a future burden.
So we'll know, I talked to Kim about this question, can they project, based on some plot sales and everything else, but it's, when is that time? I mean, the answer is we have to get with this consultant again to have them run those particular numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
And
But-
it's gonna be an actuarial in a way, because you gotta kind of
Right.
project
No
when that
doubt.
last lot gets sold, or the
Mhm.
last niche. And then at that point, then you go to this fund. And then it becomes a question of, since the fund's in place, it's the equivalent of a trust fund.
Right.
So the only thing that you're spending off of it then becomes the interest. That's the reason I'm saying that don't view that fund as it's going to fund
100%.
each year's of operations. That's not how it works.
Right, right. No, I didn't, yeah, I figured we would just.
You don't
use
bleed it
the-
down.
No, no, yeah, because it's perpetual, so we would only use the revenue that it would throw off each year.
That's correct, and that's the
Yeah.
reason I'm saying, based on own experience, based on knowing other cemeteries, a cemetery is a cost center.
Well, there's really almost no way mathematically we could get it to where it would self-fund unless we're
Unless
charging
you-
$100,000 a plot.
Well, and that was the question that Kim and I have talked about. What does that transfer need to look like into, to generate that kind of interest?
Right. Well, I apologize. I did not want to sidetrack.
No,
This
that's
is a
okay.
No, it's
different
a great
workshop, but-
question.
And Mayor, I understand that we're not talking Royal Oaks today, but my quick question, when the last plot is sold, do we still need the marketing staff and managerial staff? At that point, we will be in a maintenance mode,
It'd
right?
be maintenance, yes. Once it's sold, though, you still have, that doesn't mean every space or plot is filled. Two different
Yeah.
things.
Mhm.
So you still have to have staff on grounds to coordinate and to do the burials and to do the services and to,
Oh,
so,
Because you don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because, just because it's sold,
Doesn't mean.
doesn't mean the operations all of a sudden are shifting gears.
Yeah, I don't want to use mine as soon as I buy it. That's most certainly.
Well, and remember, a large number of those plots are generational,
Mhm.
so it's gonna be there for a while, a long while.
Maybe we can pencil in having another
We can talk about this on
work
the
session.
28th, because I think we're getting a little off
Yeah.
topic.
Yes.
Cemetery's not on the agenda technically.
Not at
So,
all.
um,
I didn't mean
The
to sidetrack.
$250,000 is on the agenda, because that's part of general fund revenue.
Okay.
So do you want me to keep it in revenue?
Yeah,
In
I
general
agree.
fund,
Keep
keep
it
that
as is.
transfer going, or
Wait,
what?
wait, so I don't want to get confused. The 244 is
Yes,
going to
no.
continue to
We're
happen.
talking about 250.
Because it's required.
Yes.
Correct.
We're talking about
The
250.
question we're asking is the 250, because that is a self-imposed transfer
Yes.
that goes back a few years. And the question is, knowing it's operating in the red, do you want to keep doing that?
When you say it's been doing, is that part of the 10% the charter requires we set aside?
No.
Okay.
This is to go back when we did the expansion back in 1920, 21, somewhere right in there. The general fund, much like you're doing right now, we didn't call it this, but we transferred the money over to finish that phase. Y'all excuse my voice, I woke up with it this morning, so I don't know. Tomorrow, who knows what voice I'll have. So I'll call it the front of the money, right? So
Oh,
at
that's
the,
right.
at the time,
That's right.
it was, well, we'll just take time to pay the general fund. We don't do that for the other funds, you know, that we did the transfers for. So it's unique to the RMC based on previous council's direction multiple years ago. So we're just asking, do you want us, for, based on what you're observing, to continue to do that? Right? There was no, we said this, there was no loan, there was no note, it was just a transfer for capital improvement.
No, but he had his hand up.
Thanks, Jim. So I guess on that 250,000, I mean, was that going towards like just fund balance in the general fund? Is it undesignated?
It's just going to cover operations.
Just kind of general operations stuff? I mean, I guess I would say that if we're looking for direction, I know that this year is showing a negative because of the memorial sales and the installation fees and all that stuff. But I remember the last discussion that we had is that's kind of a temporary, like, and it's gonna ramp back up. So, I mean, I don't see why, you know, like this year, you know, until they ramp up, you know, kind of ramp that side of the business back up, we don't do the transfer this year, and then we look at it again next year and see if sales have ramped back up. At least it gets it closer to zero than it is now. I mean, I know we'll still be out, what was this, 250, so what, 80,000? It'll still be in the negative?
Potentially, this is proposed.
Potentially, yes, yeah, thank you. But it gets us closer to zero, and it kind of minimizes the reduction of the fund balance until they get those memorial sales ramp back up. We can just look at it this year.
Jim?
Oh, thank you, sir. So what are the accounting ramifications of doing that? I mean, are we carrying something akin to a note, although not characterized as a note, that we're applying the 250 against each year?
Nope.
No.
That's
We're just dropping the money into the general fund without, so if we don't drop the money into the general fund this year, there's no
There's no
credit
downside.
that's noted on the other side.
No.
correct.
So we're not creating a deficiency elsewhere.
Nope.
It's like we're picking which you know, pocket in our pocketbook we put the money in. It's all in the same pocketbook, right?
Well,
Not
I mean,
necessarily.
I mean,
But I mean, yeah, I
So-
was just worried that we'd end up creating a deficiency
Yeah, that's what
elsewhere
I
if we were
was
Yeah,
carrying
right, from a-
something akin to a
so,
liability.
again, let me reframe it for you again. You know how we do the transfer to the capital replacement fund? You know how we do the transfer to ES? Okay? What we did was, RMC, we're basically fronting you $6 million. We're transferring $6 million so you can go build and finish your construction. The council at that time, just in general, just made the comment, you know, because it was one of the options. Okay, well, the RMC can pay back the general fund. That is the extent of the paperwork, the the note,
Okay.
the accounting. And so basically, over the last few years, from an accounting perspective, on the books, there's $6 million, and all we're doing is saying taking $250,000 a year off as we pay that down, and it's going to the general fund. There's no special fund on this side that it comes to. There's no, you know, it's being transferred out for that purpose.
Ramesh and then Brianna.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to propose that we keep it as it is. because I think it is a cleaner way to track the financial health of the ROMC operation, and for historical apples to apples comparison, I think it's a cleaner way to do it. So I propose that we leave it as it is.
Brianna?
Ramesh, I was actually gonna say something similar. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Kevin, and I see there's no downside per se, right, about the 250,000. But I think to your point, Jim, is I almost would like to have a holistic conversation around all the numbers around the cemetery rather than let's do this now and then let's do something later. Like, I'd like to leave it as is and then have that conversation.
How much of the 6 million balance do we have left?
It's actually it's a 3 million.
Oh, so, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, hey.
Okay. 3, 6.
So how much of that?
Is there about?
It's 2.5. So we've made 3 payments. So it's 3 million.
Not exactly down the road.
The only thing, yes, we can kind of have that discussion all over again, kind of.
Yeah.
But I will say, there will come a time, if this fund continues to operate at a deficit, that we will hit the fund balance requirement minimum for the RMC, because the only place right now that the deficit's being made up is through the fund balance. And the fund balance policy, is it 25%?
I believe it is.
25% of the.
Expenditure.
So cemetery, it's 60 days of expenditures.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna give you my thoughts.
Okay.
We don't do this on any other thing in the city. We don't do it with the art center, we don't do it with the Corps, we don't do it with the library, we don't do it anywhere. So to me, it's kind of like an anomaly, an outlier. And to Mike's point, when we funded that expansion, we paid for it, it was funded. So this is, to me, this is kind of like monopoly money.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mike, to your point on, I mean, I know we can have it again. I think it sounds like to me there's still questions on operating expenses and what that looks like. Like, it's not gonna be, it's always, like you said, it's always gonna be a cost center going forward. And I think it's,
And this 250 isn't impacting
Yeah.
that.
So under the current fund balance policy at 60 days, the fund balance could get as low as roughly $360,000 approximately.
I hear you.
Jim?
Okay, but I apologize for being dense, but if we've transferred 250 into the general fund out of ROMC the last couple of years, is that 250 reflected in the general fund budget we've already looked at?
It is.
Okay,
Yes, and that's
so-
why I brought the question, because we have new information. If
Yeah.
you're wanting me to remove it, I want to remove it to bring it, so you know what the general fund looks like at the next budget workshop, because that's our last one.
Okay, so in a sense, there is ramification that we've got to find that 250 in the general fund that we're applying to other expenses someplace else.
It's possible.
It's already accounted for, isn't it?
Well, the reason I say it's possible, because I don't know what you're gonna finish up tonight on it. And I know what work we have to do between now and the 28th. The 250 may not be necessary.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But
I mean,
and
because
then that's the reason I mentioned that for apples to apples comparison, if you wanted to compare it to last year and the year before, keeping it as is cleaner. Otherwise, we'll have to say, oh, remember, last year we were making the transfer, and this year we decided not to make the transfer. So that is kind of a little bit of a hiccup.
Yeah, but when you look at this, that number would either go to zero, or you'd know exactly where the 250 went.
True.
And I think that's where you were coming from, right? From the standpoint of, we can revisit it at a later time.
Yeah, I think my point though is that it's not apples to apples because we don't have memorial sales and installation fees. So that was providing revenue to the fund. I mean, you can look at it all you want. It's like,
Yeah.
the fund has to have revenue, and if the revenue source is low, we're now allowing it to operate in a deficit where we can at least minimize the deficit that the fund has this year by not doing transfers.
So you're just saying a one-time
Yeah.
deal to offset the loss in terms of the sales that were made?
I mean,
And then
I guess I'm
revisit it.
okay
Yeah.
with it for 1 year.
We're not doing this going forward unless we have that conversation.
All right.
I'll do that.
I've got,
I'm good with what Kevin
I'm
said.
good with that.
So my direction is we're leaving as is.
no,
No.
No, we
No.
want to
Pulling
get
out.
it in.
pulling it out.
Oh,
Pulling out the
my
250.
goodness. I'm sorry,
For
Don
one
Carroll
time.
signing
That's
it.
why you have to hear it the right way.
Yes.
So it's being removed as a transfer of $250,000 from
Out of the-
RMC to the general fund.
So we're removing it out of both.
Yes,
Okay.
This
One time.
year,
Yeah, one
and
time.
then let's
Well,
revisit it.
that's what we're doing this year.
Yeah, that's what we're doing this year.
This year.
This is this year's budget, right?
It's similar
Yes.
to SROs.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
we'll put it in again next year, and then if you want to move it, you can remove it, but that's what we'll do to give you the decision.
Next year we see the other sales have fired back up and then, or if there's anticipation of those firing back up. and go from there.
Well, I sure hope they fire up over $10,000.
Okay? Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so are there any questions regarding revenues before I move on to fund balance? Good. So this next slide provides the information about fund balance of the general fund. This is on page 11 in your notebook and on page 15 in the agenda packet that was emailed. This slide shows total fund balance is projected to be almost 124.9 million at the end of 9/30 of 2026. This is a decrease of about 7.2 million, and it is related to the intentional use of fund balance for the Vision 2040 work plan and then the transfer to debt. So those are about 7.7 million. There's some other things that are going on, so the decrease is 7.2. This slide does show the results of the classifications in the excess revenue allocation guidelines. And so those guidelines, and we'll talk about them later, they're back on page 22 in your notebook or page 26 in your agenda packet. It also includes the requirements of the fund balance policy, which begins on page 19 in your notebook or page 23 in the agenda packet. Fund balance is required to be broken out by these categories. The non-spendable is the 10% of the budgeted expenditures that's required by charter. The committed category includes the 15% of expenditures included in the fund balance policy. Both do, when we're calculating this, they do exclude the one-time transfer or the one-time uses of fund balance. So this is strictly based on operating expenditures. And then the other area is the assigned fund balance. And if you recall in the fund balance policy, we changed that last year. And it is now 50% of operating expenditures. Are there any questions about anything on this slide?
Kim, the 7.2 million deficit, I'm calling it deficit because we have $7.2 million more in expense than revenue. You started off by explaining a reason for that. I think I missed it. Can you please repeat that?
Yeah, but I think it might be helpful if we, I'm giving you a sneak peek. So it's really because it's because of the one-time transfers, we are planning the use of fund balance. We're planning the use of fund balance for the Vision 2040. We're planning the use for the drainage transfer to the debt. So that's really why. And there's some other things that are offsetting it so that the decrease in fund balance is not 7.7. Right now we're showing a $500,000 to the good. Revenues exceed expenditures when you look at revenues compared to operating expenditures, excluding those. So revenues are at 76.6 and expenditures are at 76.1.
Okay. And the way I interpreted it, Kim, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have this 30% or 40% of the sales tax that we are not counting in. And when you look at the difference between the 24 million and 16 million, it's approximately 7 point some million. So I thought this deficit is being paid by that. So that's not the case?
No, we do not budget that $7 or $8 million that you're talking about. We only budget through the amendment that we bring to you, or if you recall, the latest amendment made the adjustment on sales tax. That's why the fund balance then shows what it does at the end of 9/30/25, because it reflects that particular amendment. So we never recognize that money.
Understood.
So it's not using money we don't recognize because we don't know.
Where my confusion is that excess money goes into fund balance, but then we're using the fund balance to close the gap here. So we're just doing it in, no? Okay.
Okay, go back to your fund balance, go back to that chart with had the, okay. If I were to say, hopefully I'm gonna say this the right way. From your perspective, from an operations and maintenance side, that bottom line of 74 million or 76 million, that is what it costs to provide the services in this community. The 31 million in 2025 and the 7.7 million, those are funds that are identified to be used over the next 5 years, some starting this year, for capital-related projects.
Okay, understood.
Does that help you?
Yep.
Okay. So the funds, the excess funds that we'll eventually count for, yes, that's where they go, the fund balance, but then that's what you use for the one-time expenditures. We do not use those funds for O&M.
Okay. All right, got it. Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Jim?
I just want to ask a quick follow-up on that. So, on the DART expenditures, or the DART contract that we just funded, that the city agreed to eons ago,
Right.
was that taken out of our current budget, or is that in the proposed?
No, it was in the amended, right. So how much was in there before?
So that was, it was over $1 million, a little over $1 million.
So that was in this current budget at, let's just say that it showed in the fund balance, she's looking it up, but let's just keep it even, $1 million.
Right.
We brought the action to the council approved it. Then we amended the budget to bring the money from the general fund into the general fund for 25.
Got it. Okay.
So first you approve the set
It
aside,
was $1 million something, I'll get you.
then you
the-
approve the expenditure.
Thank you.
That's what I missed. We'd
Yeah.
already set it aside,
You'd already set it aside,
awaiting the approval of
awaiting
expenditure.
for many, many years for DART to finally come to us and tell us
Wow.
how much we owed.
Okay, so that was already set aside.
It was already set aside in the fund balance.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Mike.
I'm gonna speak out of turn maybe, but anytime you approve an expenditure, that happens immediately, or that year.
Even if it's 20 years later.
Yes.
I'm exaggerating,
Yeah,
obviously.
that's okay.
So we had a question from Bijou.
Thank you, Mayor. Kim, page 16, we have $100 million for the bonds, right?
We do. I'm gonna cover debt service. I'm gonna cover debt service net later.
Later today?
Is that, yes, I'm gonna go through that. Is it a question that can wait till I cover that, or just, is it now?
I can wait.
Are you sure? Okay, because I will cover the bonds and stuff in the debt service. So, I did, a couple of more things I should point out on here is the median, this 6.8, that was 7 million. If you recall, I brought the budget amendment and we amended for 112, a little over 112,000. So because we moved it to an expenditure, that category was reduced. Similar to DART, you passed DART, I brought a budget amendment, so we put it in an expenditure, so I reduced DART. If you approve this budget, this line, this council initiatives, I just figured out this, 2040 council initiatives, you know, I told you we have 2.2 million in the budget that we're gonna use fund balance. I will reduce that 11.8 by the 2.2 if you approve this budget. Okay, because it's up in the expenditures. Okay, I just wanted to make that clarification. Good, okay. Any other questions on fund balance? Okay, then the next topic is assessed valuations and the tax rate. And so we have covered what is included in the budget and the revenue needed to support the budget. And at this workshop, we also look at the preliminary assessed values and a preliminary tax rate. The information in this section can be found starting on page 12 in your notebook or page 16 in the agenda packet. The information I'm about to share is very preliminary, and it is from a June 21st report provided by the appraisal district, which is about 1 month prior to the date that certified values are provided and a few weeks earlier than we typically provide this information. So as we look at this information, remember, as the values go up, the tax rate comes down. And this is because the tax rate that generates the revenue shown in the budget decreases as values go up. Then on the other hand, if those values come down, that tax rate to generate the same amount of revenue will go up. And that's because the way legislation set everything, we're looking at what revenue, we can only generate a certain amount of revenue, and it's what tax rate does it take to generate that revenue, and we're limited on our revenue. And that is the seesaw effect.
So I'm going to add in a little commentary. Since you're looking at about a 14% change in property value.
Do you want me to tell you what it was last night?
Sure.
10.6.
10.6, okay. So 10.6. So we're going to have to, we would automatically have to reduce our tax rate to account for that so that we don't exceed the 3.499. Where that puts us in jeopardy is when in the future, and it will happen when those property values go down, then we're going to be in a negative revenue stage. That's the risk of this low 3.499. It's nothing we can do about it. But just be aware that when you see a fairly substantial property evaluation come in, like we've had the past several years, it's just escalating the values that are synthetically forcing us to lower our tax rate.
And I'm sorry, Mary, it's 10.4.
What's that?
It's 10.4.
10.4. Okay.
Okay. And so I am
I'll round it up. I'll round down to 10 then. So.
Okay. That's right. So this slide is on the top of page 12 in your binder, and it's page 16 in the electronic packet. So since the information is so preliminary, again, I'm not going to spend much time. I did want to share with you that it shows values are growing about 1.6 billion, or about the 13%, 13.5%. Now the bottom section in your binder on that page does show where this growth is coming from. And so it shows the reason for growth is either related to new construction or reappraisals, with reappraisals really driving the increase in values. In addition, the business personal property is showing a growth of 24%, and historically BPP, that growth is in the 2 to 3% range, so I would expect this category to decrease. In addition, the appraisal districts are still working through protests submitted by residents and commercial property owners. And as we just talked about, I did look, and the value was down to 12.9 from the 13.2. So between June 21st and last night, values decreased, and that is why I think that we need to wait until we receive certified values to walk through this information. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the information, but again, remember, these numbers are going to continue to change until we receive certified values.
Thank you, Mayor. Kim, I don't know if you are the right person to answer this,
in the last legislative session, they increased the personal property from 2,500 to 125,000. That means the money we collect would go down, correct? So the last line, or the second last line, we have what we could, that number would go down.
It's gonna go down. That's what I say. I mean, it's usually 2 to 3%, so I expect it to be lower. I'll be surprised if it's not.
Okay. Kim, in the past, you showed us some worksheet or a chart that basically said like, this is where the kind of the estimated value started and this is where they ended. It was like this kind of average or something like that. That you remember what?
I do.
Yeah. What is it? What's that typical reduction that you see just based on that? And this is, I know it's not an
Right.
exact science.
No, so the 30-year average, I ran that, and it's about 5%.
Okay.
And I think the highest reduction that we had was a little over 11%, and then the lowest reduction was a little over 2%.
Okay.
Between the initial values that we get and certified values.
And so this number, this is the initial values, is 13.4, okay. So historically, I'm not holding you to this, I heard you loud and clear, we need to watch, but if everything tracks on average, we can anticipate this drop to maybe 5%, historically, maybe, who knows? Magic 8 ball?
Yeah, so what I would tell you is that, historical averages, people weren't doing protests back then. I mean, we're looking at a 30-year average, and protests have increased. The appraisal district tells us every year that more and more people are protesting their values, so they're hearing more cases. And so I think it's harder to tell where we will end up.
Gotcha.
Because of all the protests that they're working, and how quickly can they work them.
Thank you very much.
And Mayor, if the ballot measure this November to increase homestead exemption, that would also affect us, correct?
It's only on the school side.
Only on the school side, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'll make 2 more comments on this, and that it's just to remember that the taxable value for residential properties with homestead exemptions can only increase 10%, and no more each year. And then in addition, there was a circuit breaker legislation that passed in the 2023 legislation that limited to 20% the increase in appraised values for non-homestead real property, and that was limited. The 20% is for anything that's valued at $5 million or less. So I wanted to show you that. Just share that with you to keep in mind. And then the next slide I'm going to show you is going to provide a comparison of the fiscal year 25 tax bill versus an estimated fiscal year 26 tax bill for the average valued home in Coppell. The slide is not in your notebook. However, in your packet, on page 13 of your notebook and page 17 of the agenda packet, I do show the tax rate based on 7% growth in values. And that is increasing the M&O property tax revenue by 3.499%. And it is setting the INS tax rate at the amount needed to pay the principal and interest due in fiscal year 26. So again, keep in mind what I'm about to show you is preliminary, and it's just to provide a view of the estimated tax bill. So the slide shows that the change in the tax bill for the owner of a residential property with a value equal to the average assessed value for residential property in Coppell. It shows the fiscal year 26 column, the value is being increased by 7%, which is the increase in value used to calculate the tax rate that's on the page in your binder. And then that is the tax rate needed to generate a 3.499% increase in property tax revenue if values were to grow 7%. The slide also shows that the tax rate will decrease a little over 1.5 pennies, and my circle isn't lined up very good, but it goes from 0.5863 to 0.3422. And then the next area shows that the tax bill would increase about $85 per year, or about $7 per month. I would like to point out, if values increase 10%, the tax rate, again, the seesaw effect. If values increase 10%, so higher than the 7%, the tax rate is going to come down. It will generate the same tax bill. Okay? So that's one thing that you can keep in mind. If it goes to 10%, that tax rate will come down, and the tax bill will still be $2,549. Okay? So then this next slide that I'm going to show you is a tax bill receipt. And so when I presented expenditures, I shared that, in a sense, the community members, that it is a community member's return on investment in the community. An investment made each year when you and all the members of the community pay the city portion of their tax bill. So let's take a look at a receipt that will show you the average residential property taxpayer, what they're going to pay for each of the services that I talked to you about earlier when I talked to you about the expenditures. So this is the receipt, and this slide shows that the average residential property tax payer is paying about $585 annually for fire protection. Jerry, do we have a handout?
Yes, we do.
We can give you a handout for this. So it's showing that for fire protection, they're paying about $585 for fire protection and paramedic service, and just under $300 annually for police service. Public safety totals about $930 annually and makes up about 43% of the total tax bill. The next section is public works, and it totals about $300 annually and makes up about 14% of the tax bill. And so together, public safety and public works, who are considered first responders, make up 57% of the property tax bill. Services covered by Community Development Department total just under $100 for the year and makes up 4% of the total tax bill. And then the Culture and Recreation, or our Community Experience Department, makes up about $386 annually, which does cover the services offered by the library, by the Corps, by the Senior Center, and by the Tennis Center. These services make up 18% of the tax bill. And then the last area is general government, which totals about $444 for the year. It makes up 21% of the total bill. And general government is where your your enterprise solutions, your employee experience, my department, strategic financial engagement, procurement, council, the city manager's office, community information office, legal, and combined services are all located. These departments are the departments that serve the other departments of the city, as well as other funds of the city. I would like to note that for this particular presentation, the one-time use of fund balance was removed because that category, we're not setting a property tax rate to cover the transfer to the DUD. We're not setting a property tax rate to cover the 2040 vision. Those are uses of fund balance. This receipt also shows that the amount paid for the average residential taxpayer for the bonds outstanding that were issued to fund things like the Beltline Road project, Royal Lane, the Fire Station 4, and Fire Station 5, just to name a few of the projects, is about almost $389. And so overall, the average residential property owner is paying about $212 a month for both the services provided by the city and an investment in the city's infrastructure. Any questions on this? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment. I love this, and if you plan to share this with the residents, my humble request would be to add another bottom line that says all other taxes, because people tend to look at it from the $8,000 or $9,000 in total bill they're paying. I think this is a great way to communicate the value that our residents are getting. Thank you, Mayor.
Bijou? Yeah, can you please go back to the previous slide? So with expecting 7% increase in the property value, without increasing or adding 3.499, increase, how much would be the tax rate?
And I have that for you, so. So what would the tax rate be? Okay, so that is, the no new revenue tax rate is on page 14 in your binder. And so the no new revenue tax rate would be 0.430718. And so it'd be 0.363066 for the maintenance and operations portion. And then the INS or the debt portion stays the same, and that stays at 0.067652. Did I answer your question?
So that's assuming $12 billion property value.
So it's assuming an increase from the current property value, which is about, I believe, 11.7, and a 7% increase in that. So I believe it is, let me have a spreadsheet. I believe it is, it's assuming a 7% increase would take us from 11.7 to 12.5 billion.
I didn't understand that, Kim. Can you please, so the.
So he was asking what a 7% increase in total value.
7% increase,
Okay, got it.
but this is assuming a 13.48, so that's why that number is.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kim.
I know it's not going to be a 13% increase in values. That's why I did not build a tax presentation around that. Okay, so let me see, which one am I on? This, okay. We did this, and then this next slide just shows an over 65, and I just wanted to point out that for an over 65, this is someone that is receiving both the over 65 exemption and a homestead exemption. They would pay about $2,100 or about $443 less than someone who only receives the homestead exemption. And so that is really my presentation on general fund revenues, expenditures, and valuations, tax bill, tax receipt, and then I have another.
I have a question.
Excellent presentation, Tim, as usual.
I have more, thank you, but we're not done.
Have we done any projections based upon the trend of, I presume, the increase in over 65 homestead exemptions, like as part of our 5-year forecast to see what net effect that has over time to the extent that people like me stay here?
No, we did a while back. We looked at the over 65, and that's when council increased it to the $100,000 level.
That was the last time we looked at it,
yeah.
and from a revenue standpoint, all these numbers take into account the growth overall, understanding what your question is, but we have not gone back to revisit that specific question.
Do you think there's any value to even looking at? I mean, I'm just kind of, it's kind of prognosticating a little.
It's a
Well,
it's a calculation.
They're saying.
Yeah.
I can.
I'm just curious how dramatic it is, if it's dramatic at all.
Oh, and I
Yeah, I mean,
We could do-
it's just running a spreadsheet with some
Yeah.
projections on it. Understand though, it's in the whole context of what's going on in the city. I understand the question, but as we look at these numbers, it's taking into account the over 65.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
May I, your real question is, what happens if the over 65 percentage goes up?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just curious if we've looked at like how that trend is developing, if it's developing.
yeah, but the last time we
And
looked
what
at
the
it, the trend's
ramifications are
developing
going
very
forward.
fast. And it's growing, that number was growing, I'm not gonna say exponentially, but the number was growing at a faster rate than our growth.
Because that freezes them at what?
No, it's not a freeze. It's only $100,000 plus whatever their other than 5%. It's only $100,000 off their value.
It's only frozen for the school, isn't it?
The school district has a different
Yeah.
set of
That's right,
formulas.
okay,
Yeah.
I apologize, yeah, that's all right. Okay.
Exemption of the 100,000.
Right, and so we provided a spreadsheet to you all for the
Kim,
January
Kim.
council retreat.
Bijou?
Yeah, Mike, just to follow up on 65 older, above 65 veterans and disabled. The last time my count was about 2,300 residents.
Okay, I don't,
So I was
don't
getting
know.
ready to answer that because I brought up the spreadsheet. I thought we might go there. So we provided that big spreadsheet that we give you in January of each year before your retreat. And in 2024, over 65 disabled vets was 3,123. 24, it was 2,896. 23, it was 2,698. 22, it was 2,526. So you can see that
So
is
there you go, it's your
increasing.
answer.
Yeah.
Where I will tell you the homestead went from 9,731 in 22 to 9,663 in 23 to 9,624 in 24, and then we had a little bump to 9,669 in 25. So
that's just on the standard homestead.
just a
exemption, not
standard
the
homestead,
65.
right? So
For the
we
longest
were
time.
seeing homestead come down and over 65 go up.
Right, and over 65, at one point in time, it was well less than 2,000. So
Yeah.
just to talk about the growth in that number. So, and you increased it to 100,000 from what it was. So yes, reflecting a policy choice, you have been increasing the amount of their exemption. The number of folks taking the exemption is growing, so therefore the dollar amount is also growing that we are not collecting.
So one more question. The 3,100, that count you mentioned, last year, right?
Yeah, it's what we provided to you in January 25.
Okay, so January 25, okay.
Mhm.
Out of 12,000,
So they're 12,792.
okay.
So the breakout is 9,669 are receiving a homestead exemption, and 3,123 are receiving over 65 disabled or veterans.
Okay, thank you. That's.
I can tell you the value, because it sounded like you wanted to hear that. So the over 65 exemption is costing it's removing $318 million in value from the roll, versus the homestead exemption is removing $284 million from the roll. So.
Out of the 11.5 billion, right?
Well, that's the assessed value. The 11.7 is the assessed value, so it's before the exemptions.
Okay. 380 plus 284.
So he's wanting to go ahead. Kim,
Okay.
you go to
So,
debt.
good. Okay, so,
Debt service?
yes. So next, we're going to talk about the debt service fund. It can be found on pages 15 through 18 in your notebook, or pages 19 through 22 in the agenda packet that was emailed to you. And this is page 15 in your notebook, and page 19 in the packet. This fund's revenue source is only the INS portion of the property tax rate, and it can only be set at the rate needed to generate enough revenue to cover the principal and interest payments during the fiscal year. So for the fiscal year 26 proposed budget, it includes property tax revenue that will be generated if the property tax value grows 7%, which will require an INS property tax rate of the 0.067652 that we just discussed, and I pointed out is on page 13 in your packet, and I think 17 in your agenda. So the total property tax supported principal and interest due in fiscal year 26 is almost $8.5 million, and that is shown on page 16 in your notebook, or page 20 in your agenda. I'd also like to point out, just if you're comparing, the property tax revenue shown in the pie chart does include $20,000 that's expected to be received for penalties and interest on delinquent taxes. The transfer in the amount of about $3.5 million represents the transfer from the water sewer fund and from CRDC for the principal and interest on certificate of obligation bonds issued for water and sewer and CRDC projects. But the water sewer revenues and CRDC sales tax is being used to pay for those bonds, and property tax isn't set for those, and that's why we transfer the money in. The total P&I shown on the graph is almost $12 million, and that is, again, the total principal and interest due on all certificate of obligation bonds outstanding. So it's for the general projects as well as the water sewer projects and the CRDC projects. We did begin showing all the CO debt in this fund regardless of the funding source. And the reason we did that was, one, for transparency concerning the amounts of certificate of obligations outstanding. But the other reason is if anything happens to the revenue source of the water sewer fund or CRDC, property taxes would need to be set to cover the principal and interest due on all COs. And then page 16 in your notebook and page 20 of the agenda packet emailed does show the schedule for total tax supported debt. The current principal amount of bonds outstanding is just a little over $100 million, with 56% of these outstanding bonds scheduled to be paid off by 2035, and then 84% scheduled to be paid off by 2040. And I'll stop there if you have any questions on this chart.
So what's the yearly payment for that $100 million debt?
So that can be found on the $100,000 on page 16 in your notebook. It shows that the payments are about $8.5 million. It jumps up to about 8.6, and then it starts coming down again. But page 16 shows you.
Yeah, I see that.
Is.
Yep.
Are there any questions on debt service?
I mean, I have questions on the next page.
Okay.
So that's 100 million plus 26 million plus 14 million is our total debt.
Well, that's the total certificate of obligations, and then we also have revenue bonds that are they were issued by CRDC back in 2014.
So that's not included in page 18?
No, because that is not a certificate of obligation. That's not tax supported. That is strictly sales tax supported.
How much is that?
And I'm looking that up for you. So the sales tax is, it's about 21.3, I believe. That's the principal portion.
21.3 million. So the total is 161 million dollars in debt.
Jerry, do you have the total? I had it written down. I'm losing. I trust your math.
Okay.
For CRDC, it was like 34.3 for CRDC.
That's the total of both bond issues.
Right.
Right. But he already broke out. He's including the amounts that are shown. The 100,000 is general, the 26 is water sewer, and then you picked up the 11.1, correct?
Yeah, I did.
And that is CRDC debt, but it's included with the tax supported. So then, or not, it's included with the certificate of obligations, and then we have the revenue bonds. that
Sure.
are-
I have the summary pages from the prior forecast that have all three.
All
Do you want
three?
those? Oh, he's wanting them all added together. Yeah. Anything else? Can I go on? I have one more topic.
Jim?
Just real quick question. So on that pie chart right there, the 6.865 in bond principal, is that just retirement of that amount of bonds in the normal course?
That is what is due, the
Okay.
principal due on bonds in fiscal year '26.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I can, so it's 8.4 that are the general obligation bonds, and then 2.3 of that, well, I'm giving you the total. 1.5 is related to water sewer. 4.6 is related to general, and then we have about 640,000 that is CRDC, that would be included in that amount, I think.
But that's taking them off our books?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's reducing the debt.
Yes, okay, thank you.
We move on.
168. Is that principal and interest? That is principal and interest? Okay. 168.5, principal and interest.
That's right, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Was prepared for that, but obviously not prepared enough because I lost my sheet. So, okay, can I go on? Fund balance? So in your packet, it includes both the excess revenue allocation guideline and then the fund balance policy, which begins on page 19 in your notebook and on page 23 of the agenda packet. The guidelines were updated and presented to you at the June 2024 council retreat. We also discussed the guidelines at the May 6th retreat. No changes are being recommended this year. The fund balance policy was approved by council in August of '24. Staff does have one new recommendation to the fund balance policy, and that can be found on
The highlight, page 20.
it's highlighted in yellow, page 20 of your packet, I think 24, or 20 in your notebook, 24 in the packet. So the fund balance, so we are recommending this change because the city has a new benefits consultant, and the consultant and staff have been working together to develop a recommendation for the minimum ending fund balance of the self-funded health fund. The recommendation is that the minimum fund balance for the self-funded health fund be maintained at a level that is equal to the average of 35% of the following year's budgeted claims as provided by the benefit consultant, and the average of 6 months claims based on the most recent 24 months. So we believe this recommendation captures both historical trends as well as future projections. And just for reference, the current minimum fund balance for this fund is either the sum of the 6 largest months of claims for the most recent 24 months, or 6 months of average claims since inception, whichever results in the lower balance. And so using 6 months of average claims since inception is really capturing extremely outdated information, considering the self-funded was implemented in 2001. So we feel like revising the fund balance policy based on the consultant's recommendation and our conversations would be a better strategy and good stewards of our money. Are there any questions regarding the recommendation? Because if you're okay with it, I will bring it to you as an agenda item for you to approve.
Thank you, Mayor. Kim, you may have mentioned this and I missed it. With this change, does that fund number go up, down, or how does it change?
So it really, it goes up slightly from how we were doing it. Not a lot, slightly.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anything else? And so now it's back. I'm done.
You're done.
I'm done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody have any general questions for Kim? We will be hearing you again on the 28th, I believe.
You will be hearing from me many more times in the next couple of months. Yes. So I want to confirm we are going to remove the $250,000 transfer from both Rolling Oaks and from the general fund, and that I'm going to bring forward the fund balance policy, making the change to the self-funded health.
Yes, that is correct. Anybody have anything else?
No other changes. Because the 28th is when I'm bringing you the budget that we will then file on August 5th with the city secretary, and when we make that filing, it becomes your budget.
So Kevin, to your question earlier about the amount that the appraised values are going to go down, part of her difficulty, and she's not talking about it, is things changed after COVID.
Oh.
And it's been different as a result. And I don't know that we've hit a normal, a steady state that we can even, yeah, we know that minimum was 2 and the high was 11, but,
Sure.
Normally we were 5, but that number's, like she said, suspect.
I just thought that was a very interesting sheet, just to get some kind of information.
And really, what I would say to you is it's different. When we were, when everything was based on a tax rate, the tax rate could only go up 8% without a rollback, right? You weren't even really looking at values. You could raise your tax rate and whatever it generated. Today, it doesn't matter what your value is. If you're telling me that my revenue can increase 3.499, then I am going to give you the tax rate based on the value, and the tax bill doesn't change. Right? The tax bill doesn't change because the rate is going to come down or go up depending on where values go.
Yep.
To generate the same tax bill.
Yes.
All right. Anybody have anything else? We're going to move on to item number 9 then, which is our second citizens appearance. Persons wishing to speak must sign the register and list their address. Presentations by individuals shall be limited to 3 minutes each. Persons signed up to speak shall be called in the order that they signed up. No personal attacks by any speaker should be made against any member of the council, the mayor, individual, group, or corporation. There will be no comments or deliberations from the council due to the Texas Open Meetings Act. We did have one person signed up to speak for the second citizen appearance. That's Mr. Dave Shaw. Dave?
I will withdraw my request. I don't have any further comments.
Okay. Thank you very much. Therefore, there being no further business before this group, we are adjourned at 8:03 p.m. and see you tomorrow night.